Same one, isn't it?
No.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 11, 2015 Planning and Zoning meeting. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, then a moment of silence.
Did that well. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have roll call from left to right, please.
Anthony Sutton.
John Grant.
Jean Servine.
Edward Mead.
Carl Moore.
Tom Nickel.
Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
And I am Ben Gettinger. Also present are David Sokas, City Planner, and Phyllis Leggett, Board Clerk. The first item on the agenda is executive session, discussion of pending litigation, Bella Properties Milford LLC versus Milford Planning and Zoning, 1556 New Haven Avenue. Would anyone like to make a motion to go in executive session?
So moved.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion to go in executive session passes, and we invite the city planner in. All right, we're back on the record. With respect to item agenda C1, we will take action at the next meeting and it will be put on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is closed public hearing, expires on 4/3/15, 460 Bick Drive, Zone OD, petition of Garden Homes Management Corporation for special permit and site plan review approval to construct a 257-unit residential development under CGS Section 8-30G on map 41, block 301, parcel 29, of which Garden Homes Residential LP is the owner. The record on this application is closed. Would anyone like to have any discussion? Mr. Quish.
So we have a long history with this application, and we've had a lot of input from experts on both sides, and we've had a lot of input from the community at large, neighbors, and then a larger community than just the close neighborhood. I personally see that there is a number of issues that would make me not support this application. The safety and health issues, traffic issues. We look at the potentials for health and safety with potential fire problems, egress in and out of the site is limited, and that, if we have a winter like we did this winter with the amount of cars that are slated to be parked there, it could be quite difficult to address any fire issues with the pipeline. If there's potential for repairs that need to be done and equipment in there, again, it would put stress on the site. And we are kind of limited with the actual state law, with the 830G. There's the commissions across the state, our hands are somewhat tied. And although there is a broad statement that we have to consider health and safety and any other matters that we're legally allowed to look at, I think about the stress level of the community. I mean, if they're seeing their city allow something to happen, it's going to create just a negative feeling about the whole project. I think that people's stress level, if they're caught in traffic, 3 or 4 times at a light, or just in general experiencing just a disruption to their life and inconvenience, I think it creates a stress, and I think stress does affect health. I think that's obvious and accepted medical science. So safety issues, with regard to the site and the congestion at the site and just the scale of the project makes it potentially unsafe and unhealthy, and I do not support this project.
Any further discussion? Mr. Pinzello.
I agree 100% with Mr. Quish, with another few exemptions, being the low water pressure is another problem. There's going to be a problem with blasting during construction with the pipeline there, and just seems to be a lot of problems, a lot of stress level, and something that we really don't need. I'm against it also.
Any further discussion? Ms. Servine?
I would just reiterate what Mr. Quish said, and what has been said numerous times during this application, how our hands are tied a lot because of the state regulations. And I just want everybody out there who's concerned to understand that if we could vote with our hearts, we would certainly vote one way that's pretty obvious, but we are somewhat restricted. That being said, I also am very concerned about safety issues in terms of emergency vehicles. That's one of my major concerns. I think that it's going to be very hard for an emergency vehicle to access the back of the property. I believe, and we do know, that I think the minimal regulations, state and city, have been met. But I think because of the size of this project that it's necessary to go beyond the minimum. And one of the things I asked at, I think the last public hearing, was whether the applicant had considered a separate road for emergency vehicles. And the response Mr. Lynch gave, I believe, was that the topography made it impossible. Well, I had to chuckle a little bit because here we're putting a very large project on this topographical area. And I think that would not be a reason that would be adequate to deny an access road. I think we also asked for sidewalks, and the initial response there was that the topography wouldn't allow it. And what the applicant did there was agree to have the sidewalks, which I thought was a great concession. But I think that an emergency access is very, very important. And with the way Mr. Lynch responded, it almost seemed to me, or we could infer from the way he responded, that they had given that some consideration. So possibly they were thinking about emergency situations. I also think it's very hard. We get recommendations from individual departments, and we respect them greatly, but the buck stops with us. And one of the things we do as a board is we look at the big picture. And sometimes we get a report from a department that seems accurate and meets their standards, but they may not be able to incorporate the entire picture that we see. And I think it's possible that with the fire department, for example, and the police department, they may have not been looking at the big picture as much as we have, and to hear the public input that we have been hearing in terms of the issues that are of concern to the neighbors in that area. So I would say in terms of safety, because of the density of the project, the traffic issues, the turning only one direction out and having only one ingress and egress, and the width of that ingress and egress, and as it circles around the property, that it's very questionable, I think, if, say, 4 o'clock in the morning, there should be an emergency and all the lot's full, and we just had a storm with 20 inches of snow, that I think would be pretty challenging to get trucks in the back. Plus, if you had a big emergency, you might have a lot of fire trucks from other regions, and how are they going to get to where it's necessary? So that's one of my reasons why I believe I'm going to vote for denial of this project.
Any further discussion? Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to join in many of the reasons raised by Mr. Quish and Ms. Servine, and I'd also like to note that I believe that during the public comment
portion of this hearing that we received a great deal of compelling testimony and documentation that demonstrate approving this proposal would have a serious negative impact on various health and safety issues. And again, particularly what was talked about, the emergency vehicle access, the issue of traffic leaving the site being required to turn in one way, the additional amount of cars and traffic in the area, coupled with the emergency access, I think creates a very serious issue about public safety that we have to consider. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Quish?
Yes, I'd like to ask staff to help us and craft the motion for next meeting.
Based on what I heard this evening, I assume that you want a motion crafted that is for denial?
That's what I'm asking, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this project, like Mr. Veen says, our hands are tied pretty much. We've had other 8-30G projects where we denied, and then they came back to us and we had to approve them. So saying that, I mean, every time we have a big project like this and people come out and we have the state legislature, people down here, Gail Schlossberg and everything, and telling us that it's our problem, but actually it's her problem, or people in Hartford, to change the law so that we won't be in this predicament every 3 or 4 months. But one thing that I did come up with is I believe that for the health and safety, the only safety that I can really find is for traffic, and mainly at the corner of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue, especially when it would be early in the morning because of the people going to the old Bick building, Northeast Electronics, Subway headquarters is right down the street within a quarter mile. And then one other thing that came up, I was thinking if, even though they're 1-bedroom and studio apartments, people can still have children in there that are school age, and the city of Milford is looking to cut the budget, close schools and everything. So what if there is an influx of kids going to Kennedy School? Where does the other parts of the city departments come up with the money to either keep the schools open or not? You know, that's one decision that the Board of Ed is doing. So in those 2 areas, I would think I would vote for denial.
Any further discussion? Mr. Sutton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add one additional point. During the during the hearing of this matter, we heard testimony regarding compliance with municipal codes and regulations. I wanted to state that my belief that I think regardless of a strict compliance with codes and regulations, I still believe that in light of that, there can be legitimate and reasonable safety concerns that can exist beyond that strict compliance and the lowest standard applicable to our regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Servine?
No, I just want a clarification. We have done this in the past, but not recently. We have referred that a motion be written by Mr. Sulkus. And is it clear that there'll be no further input either from the public or the applicant in terms of in the time between now and when our denial is written?
That's correct.
All right, so we will get a motion at the next meeting, and I assume we will vote on the motion at the next meeting. When is the next meeting? Just for April 6th. All right, well, we're going to get to the next item on the agenda. If you are going to leave, we will just take a 2-minute break, and then we will get to the other items on the agenda. If you could please exit quietly. We're back on the record. The next item on the agenda is new business, 180 New Haven Avenue, Zone CD-4, petition of Thomas B. Lynch, Esquire, for a minor amendment to a special permit and site plan review to allow the gas line, sales, and convenience store to lease U-Haul rental vehicles on map 55, block 590, lot 1, of which Goal LLC is the owner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton. My office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And I'm here tonight with my client, Masood Bahram, who's seated with me in the front row. Mr. Bahram is the owner, along with his father, Mustafa, of the Shell gas station that's located at the corner of New Haven Avenue and Gulf Street here in Milford, at 180 New Haven Avenue. We're before you tonight with an application for a minor amendment to the special permit that was granted to the Bayrams back in February of 2003. And what I've brought with me tonight is a copy of the original site plan that was presented to the board at that time. The board granted the application for a special permit. I handed a copy of that permit out to you before the start of my comments to you tonight. And basically, for many, many years, there was a gas station located at that site. It had a 2-bay service area with lifts. It was operated by a local owner, and in 2003, Mr. Bahram and his father purchased the property and sought this permit to change the use from the service station, sole service station use, to a retail gasoline facility with a convenience store. So basically, the service bays were converted into the store itself. There was a canopy that was created for the gas pumps, and the site plan, which I believe you have as part of your file, was approved in February. And there was a restriction, as you can see in the paragraph underneath the granting clause. There was language in there that specifically said that there would be no sale or leasing of motor vehicles. And last year, my client signed a contract with U-Haul. There was a U-Haul franchise located in Devon on Bridgeport Avenue. It was the only U-Haul franchise in Milford. There's another one up the post road in Orange, and I believe there's one in Stratford. But they're almost like liquor permits. They're very difficult to get. He was able to obtain the franchise to lease U-Haul trucks and vans, and quite honestly, he felt that that was not a violation of what the special permit was. And I think we all know gas stations around town. We know that accompanying the retail sale of the gasoline or repair of automobiles on site, many gas stations in town have motor vehicle sales as part of the overall operation. And my reading of this permit and his intent was that there would not be any sale of motor vehicles on the property, and that's, you know, the way that the permit was issued. There was a cease and desist order that was issued from Mr. Harris, our zoning enforcement officer, back in August, and upon his receipt of that, he contacted me. I met with him. I met with Mr. Sulkus on at least one occasion. I met with Mr. Griffith. David wanted to have an updated survey performed. That was done also. That, again, is part of your packet. But there were 3 or 4 things that were not done on the site that David has set forth in his memo to you tonight. The parking spaces to the left side of the building were not striped. There was damage that was done from a truck backing into one of the on-site light poles that is now bent and over, it actually protrudes a little bit over the public right of way. And also, the dumpster that was shown on the original site plan as being on the far right-hand side of the property is now closer to the rear door of the convenience store facility itself. So these have been brought to my client's attention. He's certainly willing to address those and will address those. But what we're seeking from you tonight is a minor amendment to the special permit to allow him to lease these U-Haul vehicles. On the site plan, there's some 7 parking spaces that are on the right-hand side of the building. Under the franchise agreement, and if it's a condition of approval, we certainly would adhere to it, but under the franchise agreement, he only has 5 vehicles on site. He can't have any more than that. It's just the 5 vehicles that he leases on the site. And quite honestly, it's a convenience for customers. Again, he's the only franchise holder in Milford. He's run a very good business there for the last 12 years. I'm sure that each of you drive by there on a regular basis. You see the way that he keeps the site. He's really become a fine member of the Chamber of Commerce in the community, and he's asking for an amendment to the special permit to allow him to continue to lease these U-Haul vehicles. Again, reading the original permit, I think that the intent was for him not to have a auto sale facility there, even though the word leasing was in the language in the granting clause. But I think that this particular use is something that's different, and we're asking to have it legitimized by an amendment to the permit. I spoke with David again last week. David has given you a memo saying that there's a threshold that we need to get over first before you can consider this, because of the fact that the property is located in the CDD4 zone. In a CDD4 zone, service stations themselves are not permitted. This is a pre-existing non-conforming use, and as you traverse down New Haven Avenue going towards Pond Point Avenue, you know that there are other gasoline facilities along that stretch, some of which do have automobile sales. Down by Sereno's, next to Jeffrey's Restaurant, those 2 facilities there were former auto repair facilities, gasoline sale facilities that now sell cars. So those are clearly non-conforming uses in this zone, and we'd like to say that this is a different situation. The U-Haul trucks are not selling cars, and David has put together his memo to you tonight. I'm sure he's going to have comments, but my retort to that is the fact that this is a legal non-conforming use. It was grandfathered before the CDD4 zone went into effect, so that this U-Haul leasing portion of Mr. Bayram's business would be something that I would term as being accessory. It's not where we're coming before you with a primary request to establish a gasoline station in a CDD4 zone. Obviously, we couldn't do that because it's a prohibited use under the regulations. So those are my comments to you. Again, I'm stressing the fact that my client has conducted a good business, and this is something that he certainly, it's not like going and building something without a permit. He just interpreted the special permit that he got to prohibit him from selling or leasing cars, not the specific use of renting out U-Haul vehicles for people to use for moving purposes. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Mr. Lynch did a fine job of summarizing most of my report, so thank you. I would just call your attention to the last part of the report, which is the section called Board Action. You really need to determine whether or not you're going to accept this application and then rule on it. And That's because under CDD4, section 3.19.5.2, it states, no commercial garage, gasoline station, vehicle repair, and/or service garage, vehicle dealership, vehicle washing establishment, or other similar uses shall be permitted. We know that we have a pre-existing non-conforming gas station that's there now. That's fine. The additional new use, which is a vehicle rental establishment, in my opinion, doesn't fall under, it clearly falls under being a prohibited use in here. But obviously that's for you to decide. Whether or not that use is a main use, whether or not it's an accessory use, it doesn't make a difference under the regulations. The types of businesses, the types of uses that I read off to you are prohibited. But in the end, you have to make that call.
Any questions from the board?
Yes, I don't have a paper copy of your report. I read it via email. Okay, I have it now. Yeah, so I don't see, I don't see a van rental or a truck rental specifically prohibited in this language. What would you, it's not a garage or the gas station repair facility, all those things are existing. It's not a...
Or other similar uses.
Yeah, so I don't even see this as similar. I don't think it's prohibited.
So it's similar to those uses that I mentioned, which would make it prohibited. Basically, and
if you think they're prohibited, I don't think. I mean, if you think they're similar, I don't think that.
Well, that's your call.
Yeah,
all I can tell you is that when the board redid the zoning and created the CDD4 zone, they specifically wanted to remove all automotive uses. Anything related to an automotive use was removed from that zone. Things that were already there, they're pre-existing non-conforming, that's fine. But the intent of the board when it created the CDD4 zone, which was done shortly after this was approved, by the way, this was approved in February of '03, January of '04 is when the CDD4 was created. The board specifically didn't want any of those uses. So that's up to you to decide whether or not this particular use is similar or not similar to that.
Okay, thank you. So, the way I read it, I don't think that it's specifically prohibited, and when they created the CDD4, they already knew that there was existing non-conforming uses. And I do think that there is a substantial distinction between a primary or ancillary use. It's not taking this and now turning it into a used car lot. It's it's just an added service to their existing customer base. I think it's outside of the fact that there's some defects in property with the light that's damaged. Obviously, those are going to be treated the way they would in any case, and they're not really related to this at all. They just need to be done, but they're not. It's not germane to whether or not you have U-Haul rental.
And if I can jump in also, that was part of the cease and desist, and I had said to, again, sitting with David and going through the cease and desist, I said that we clearly would address those things as part of the application.
Any further questions from the board? Mr. Grant?
I have a question. You said there's 7 spaces to the right?
Correct.
So 5 of them would be used for the vehicle parking?
Correct.
How many does that leave for customers going to the using the convenience?
Well, there's a total of, John, the original site plan showed 12. The problem, as David noted, is that the other 5 on the left side of the building aren't striped, but they are shown on the original site plan that you have. So there's a total of 12 spaces. And one of the issues was the dumpster was moved to behind the building. On the original site plan, the dumpster was shown to the right of the last.
I live right down the street. I go by there every single day, so.
The original spot that it was shown on the site plan.
So there's 12 total parking spaces, and they want to use 5 for the U-Haul?
Correct.
And would all 5 always be there, or would some be out on the road?
No, they'd be out on the road.
So the most they take up would 5, which would leave 7. Is that sufficient? I guess I'm talking to the applicant. Is that sufficient for?
I asked him that, and you can ask to have him come up, but I asked him that specifically, and he said that it's more than sufficient, because some people who come into the store are parked at the pumping stations, and they'll go in and pay for their coffee and newspapers after they pump their gas.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Mead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the applicant. Do you know if the rentals that they're going to have on property are just going to be for local rentals, or are they going to lease them or rent them to go one way? Because if it's going to be local, you can have certain sizes on the property, but if you're going to have one way, you can end up having 5 24-foot furniture vans there, which is too much.
Right, and I specifically asked him that. He has 1 pickup, he has 3 small vans and 2 small box vans, the 14-foot box vans. So there would never be any of those large 24 to 30-foot box vans.
Mr. Mead?
I'm familiar with this station. I frequent it a lot, and I've always liked it. And I'm always in support of businessmen in this community. But I think there's a bigger issue here. I do believe it comes under prohibitive practices for this zone, and I think it's increasing a nonconformity, and that would be my biggest concern. I think this board, my experience on this board has been that the last thing we want to do is increase a nonconformity, and nor would we want to set a precedent for others then to be able to base their requests on an application like this. So I will be voting against it because I think it increases nonconformity and it's not consistent with our plan of conservation and development.
Any further comments? Mr. Sutton?
A question for the applicant. Would the U-Haul vehicles be a set 5 vehicles that would come and go from the site, or would U-Haul swap out different vehicles that maybe were going one way, others would go to another franchise? How would that work?
They're set from the site. They're all leased from the site and returned to the site.
Thank you.
Yep. The larger facilities have the, the one way, you rent it in Orange and then you drive to New York and leave it there. That's not the operation here.
See, I have a problem telling a gas station that they can't lease U-Haul trucks. I mean, it seems so common to me. So, it seems like the regulations, there's room for interpretation. We have 2 different opinions. I don't know which one's right, but I think I would support the application because to me, it just seems like that's what a lot of gas stations do. They rent cars, they sell cars, they rent U-Haul trucks, and without it specifically being prohibited, I will err on the side of commerce, I guess, and support the application.
And to follow up with that, Ben, I think you have to look on it at a case-by-case basis, and in this instance, I know the way that Masood and his father run their business. I mean, they run a very clean operation. The parking lot is not a mess. It's not scattered. You don't have one truck at one end of the property and another one at another end. Sort of the situation that you do see when gas stations are selling cars. They have those trucks in those spaces, and I think, again, looking at it on a case-by-case basis, I think that it's a reasonable request.
Mr. Nickel?
Yeah, I believe I heard there'd be a maximum of 5 U-Haul type vehicles in there.
Correct.
Would that include trailers too?
They don't have trailers, Tom. It's just the vans.
No, I understand, but there are small trailers that are rented by U-Haul. Would they also be in there, and then would they be under the 5?
If they were there, they would be part of the 5, but they don't have trailers. I know that U-Haul has trailers, but this particular facility, the way that his agreement with U-Haul is, it's just the 5 trucks as I laid out for you. The 1 pickup, the 2 vans, and the 2 small box cars, box trucks.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Veen in regards to setting the precedents, and I don't think we should go on a case-by-case basis. Based off of that, you can have many gas stations having U-Haul trucks and selling U-Haul trucks, and based off the CDD4 design, I don't think it would be aesthetically pleasing at all. And for that, I think I'll be voting against it.
Mr. Quish and then Mr.
Yeah, so just, and I understand your point. I understand the concept that adding to a non-conforming use is not the direction that we're trying to go as a board. I think that the CDD4 was put in place when they knew this was here, so the existing non-conformity supersedes the CDD4, and I think that the site's just big enough to do it. If it was cramped and it looked bad and it didn't make sense for a number of other safety or convenience reasons, I think I'd probably agree with you guys. I do think the site's big enough. I think it's a benefit to the community to be able to rent a truck, you know, right in downtown. And it's again, I think it's a good use for the site. And again, there's definitely plenty of room. You know, so it's not like a congestion issue that we face in so many other applications. Thank you.
It has absolutely no bearing on my decision, but could they sell the license that they have if, say, they can't lease U-Hauls? What happens to the license?
He'd have to sell it outside of Milford. They go by territories.
Any further questions? Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I remember the day when it was a full gas station, then it got converted to the convenience store. And when they created the CDD4, the other Planning and Zoning Board must have had an idea of why they wanted to write in here no sale or leasing of motor vehicles on property. When they changed the corridor there, they had to have good reason for them to do it. I could see if it was still a full-service gas station that, you know, U-Hauls are always part of gas stations. But now that it's just a convenience store, I think it's a little bit different than having a gas station doing the U-Haul rentals at the same time. So I'd probably be against this.
Mr. Grant?
I just had a suggestion to throw out that basically, if we do for approval, that it would be with a condition that there would be only the 5 vehicles on that property for the U-Haul, and that they would not be able to increase that at any point.
Mr. Quish?
Yeah, just one point to the language in the existing special use. It looks to me like they're really thinking about a sale or lease. You know how you go, you purchase a car or you lease a car. So I really don't think the vision was to prohibit a U-Haul type operation, which is very different in scale, very different in intent. And I think it becomes the issue of primary or ancillary use. If it becomes a used car lot that happens to sell gas, then it really is against the intent, in my mind. But I do think that it primarily is a gas station convenience store with an ancillary use, small footprint, disturbed by the parking of the vehicles, which won't all be there at the same time. necessarily. And I do like Mr. Grant's protection, that it doesn't grow. We give him permission now and then it grows later, so that it is limited for this specific request. So again, I think it's good for the community.
Just for clarification, this is still a gas station, correct?
Yes.
It still sells gas?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Servine?
Can I just comment on the Plan of Conservation Development and that district, the CDD4? That corner is considered a gateway into Milford Center, and it also has residential areas not far from it, condominiums, and I think one of the intents of creating that district was to keep it as non-commercial as possible. We know there's a shopping center there, which could use a little help, I guess. But I think this is, again, I hate to do it because I like these people, I like the station, I like to see them have a good business, but I don't think in the big picture that we should be increasing this nonconformity. And again, I do not think it fits in with the goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development.
Mr. Grant?
Just one point on Ms. Savine's there's no residential in that area. There's Olympic Donut, the strip center on the one side, the veterinarian on the other, the All Ed is on the other side. There's businesses all up and down that street. There are some apartments above some of those, but basically there is no residential on that street at all.
Can I just take quick issue with that? I think I said nearby, and I'm very familiar with that area. I mean, it's Gulf Street, one of the primary streets in Milford, actually. But
Any further questions? Would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application as presented, with the caveat that a maximum of 5 U-Haul vehicles be on site at any given time.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? I'll simply say that I support the motion. I mean, it's called a commercial district. I don't know why we should say there should be no commercial businesses in the district. I support it, it just seems logical and like the right thing to do, so I'm going to support the motion. Any further discussion?
I'm going to deny this motion, I'm sorry. Based off of the prior planning and zoning board's interest in it. I think once it became a convenience store in that aspect of it, I think that's why they did not want any type of uses such as the leasing of U-Haul trucks and things like that. That can become a safety issue based off of that. And that's why I would deny this motion.
No, he's just commenting on the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Everyone against? 5. The motion fails, and I think we should do a roll just for the record. Mr. Sutton?
Against.
I vote against the motion.
Mr. Grant?
Vote for the motion.
I'm Mr. Gettinger, and I vote for the motion.
against the motion?
Against the motion.
Against the motion.
Against the motion.
For the motion.
For the motion.
Thank you. The motion fails. The next item on the agenda is 86 Oldfield Lane, Zone R18, Cluster to R10, petition of John Gable for Coastal Area Management Site Plan Review Approval to construct a single-family residence on map 37, block 588, of which Fred Knopf is the owner. I apologize if I mispronounced the owner's name.
Good evening. For the record, John Gable with Connecticut Consulting Engineers out of Meriden. I'm here on behalf of the owner and applicant, Fred Knopf, who is present tonight. We're here for the approval of the CAM site plan application that you have in front of you. The subject site is known as 86 Oldfield Lane. It's located on the westerly street line of Oldfield Lane, and it's just northwest of the intersection of Indian Hill Road. It's located in the R18 zone, which is clustered to an R10 zone, and consists of just shy of a half an acre. And it's presently an empty lot. Also, the proposed dwelling is going to be serviced by the public sewer and water, and the on-site drainage system is going to consist of 2 rain gardens. We did receive staff approval from Public Works Engineering, and we did get a letter of jurisdictional ruling from the Wetlands Office. They have some conditions on plantings and some shrubs we're going to put in the back and a fence. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a straightforward application. I'd like to see if the commission has any comments regarding the proposal.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
According to Mr. Harris's report, staff finds the application satisfies the criteria of our regulations.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nickel.
Yes, are you in the process of building a house right next door?
No, I believe not.
There were 2 lots on that street there.
They have an approval, but they're not starting. There's no construction.
You're right next to that lot
yes,
that
we are.
approved?
Yes.
Any further questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Ms. Servine?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 753 East Broadway, Zone R5, petition of Ron Diarlio, architect for Coastal Area Management Site Plan Review Approval to construct a single-family residence on Map 22, Block 474, Parcel 24, of which Carmen Stefano is the owner.
I'm Ron Durilio, architect, 42 Cherry Street, Milford, Connecticut. We're asking for the board to approve the Coastal Area Management Site Plan Review. The proposed project is consistent with the neighborhood and consistent with the current use of the property. All of the disturbed area during construction will be surrounded by erosion controls at all time. The site application has been reviewed by the engineering department, the public works, and the fire marshal. We addressed all their comments with site plan revisions and also a letter stating that we will install sprinklers in the structure. The house is currently a legal 2-family residence. The main structure will be lifted and a stair and landing extension will be put in front because of the height. And we also propose to put wood decks in the rear of the property. We're not increasing the current lot coverage, and that will remain at 40%, and the maximum is 65%. The building area is going up to 38%, but we're still below the 45%. One of our goals with the structure is to move it up above the VE 13 flood zone in the area of high velocity wave action. Another goal was to keep the structure 50 feet away from the tie line and behind the coastal jurisdiction line. see. So all the rainwater from the structure will drain into crushed stone beds along the side of the building. The lower level will be built to flood standards and have 5 flood vents plus an overhead door on each side, which will allow water to flow through the structure. On the rear, the deck will be using a 6-foot diameter spiral stair, which will reduce the bulk of construction and obstruction by putting a massive stair in the flood zone. The area below the decks will be made of concrete pavers, which will allow water to drain through. This is also the case with the proposed driveway. As stated by the engineer in the CAM report, this project will have no adverse impacts to the surrounding parcels or the coastal resources. And I'd be happy to explain more of the house if you'd like to hear any more information on the house or the design.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
No, the staff has found that this CAM meets the criteria of our zoning regulations.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Mr. Nickel.
When you build this new structure, I noticed, is that an easement that you have between you and your neighbor for access to the beach?
Yes. The problem with that easement, if you want to call it a problem, is our site engineer, if you look on the survey notes, he referenced, I would say, about 13 different surveys, maps of the area, trying to determine exactly where that right-of-way is. Right now, everyone walks along the side of the house, and we're going to keep it that way. But the engineer couldn't define the exact area of that because there was so much conflicting information. So we will just keep that open as a walkway.
So the easement will remain and people will be able to access the beach between your structure and the next one?
Yes.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Nickel?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve 753 East Broadway.
Having a motion and a second. I will second the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is liaison report. Anyone with a report? No reports. The next item on the agenda is the regulation subcommittee. Mr. Grant.
Our last meeting, I submitted a list of 8 different regulations that the committee went over and with the recommendations to them. One item, section 6.2.1, was discussed with the city attorney, and the city attorney's recommendation was that we do not delete the wording. There are other sections in the code that will allow for us to do what we were trying to get to have happen. So basically, item D would be deleted from the request. The board needs to vote on it this evening as to whether or not we want to recommend for these to go forward for the city, different city and state approvals, so that we could bring it to the public hearing. So do you want me to do them one at a time, or do you want to do them all at once, or?
Are you going to
any
to
discussions?
read them? Does anyone need them read? Does anyone not read them? Is everyone prepared to vote on them? Any discussion before we vote? Seeing none.
I would just say you'd vote for the whole package. I don't think we need to go individually.
Okay. So we're deleting the one that the city attorney recommended not to go forward, and the rest we will make a motion to go forward on. Would anyone like to second that motion? Mr. Quish, any discussion on the motion? Ms. Servine?
Just so it's clear to the board that we'll be discussing them after they go through these different departments, and we can always make adjustments or just, you know, make decisions at that time. So this isn't a final decision necessarily.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? The motion passes. Anything else, Mr. Grant?
No, next meeting will be next month.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Would anyone like to comment or make a motion? Mr. Pinzel?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? That motion passes. Chair's report. I just want to thank everyone on the board, Mr. Solkis and Ms. Leggett, for coming today. I know it wasn't a regular scheduled meeting, but we all are here, and I really appreciate it, as I'm sure the public does. Any staff report?
Not this evening.
Anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I will second. All in favor? Motion passes.
April 6th.
April 6th.